Hello, everyone. I'm Pastor Josmays, and with this greeting, I'm welcoming you to Sunrise Church. Today is the 16th Sunday after Pentecost, and the message for today is the God of the Covenant. The gospel for today comes from Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 through 16, and it is about one of Jesus' explanations on how the kingdom of heaven is like. The order of priorities in which everyone will be treated, and the rewards that each one will receive for doing their jobs. In the Gospel of Matthew, this passage is right after the dialogue between Jesus and the rich young man who went away feeling sad when Jesus told him that in order to inherit the kingdom, he needed to sell his possessions and distribute them among the poor. It is also in that passage that the apostles inquire about the benefits that would await them in heaven for following Jesus. It's also in that passage where Jesus uses the phrase, "Many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first." Matthew 19:30. At the same time, today's passage also finishes with the same phrase that we just cited as a way to emphasize and make clear that the kingdom of heaven is not competitive, but that it is for everyone without distinction or exclusiveness. It also alludes to God's infinite love and undeserved mercy toward us, that even when we might not have deserved it or earned it, God chose to give it to us. We have named today's message the God of the Covenant because throughout the Holy Scriptures, we see how God relates to God's people by making agreements with them, by keeping, renewing, and even modifying those agreements, always for the benefit of the people, even when it seems that the people, us, and not God, are the ones that frequently fail to do our part. This parable from Matthew 20 also begins with a verbal agreement or covenant. We read in verses 1 through 2, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and send them into the vineyard." A denarius was the usual daily wage of a day laborer, and that's what the landowner offered to the workers he hired, and they agreed before getting to work. The landowner from this parable that represents God was just and kept his word by paying the first workers what was previously agreed. However, he is the landowner. In other words, he can make as many agreements and he wants, and he can modify them, the terms to those agreements as he pleases. Nevertheless, the pay to the first employed workers remained the same as agreed. The problem came when they compared the difference between the amount of work performed by them and those that were hired last. This is not the first parable that warns us about the danger of comparing ourselves to others in terms of seeking for advantages with relation to them. This distortion and corruption of our very being by the plague of jealousy and envy. The parable known as the parable of the prodigal son is another example of how, with or without a reason, these feelings may arise, even between members of the same family. The older son questioned the father for forgiving his brother, and the claim was pretty much similar. The older brother was so angry that he said to his father, "All these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat, so I celebrate with my friends." Luke 15:29. But again, the kingdom of heaven is like ellipsis. And what follows that statement sometimes is not too different from what we already know. It's not too difficult to understand or follow, or maybe yes, somehow a little bit, but yet it's on us to accept it and not to resist it. Yet it is on us keeping our word, because God never fails to God's covenants. It is on us in our disobedience and greed, in our desire not only for being simply good or satisfied, but in our ambition for being better than the others. Beware of this, friends, of this, because this is one of the subliminal, incipient, and sometimes unconscious symptoms of envy and greed. And it is that we usually don't think that we are doing well in life when we have our basic needs satisfied, not even when our achievements are positive, but instead we tend to evaluate how good, happy, and wealthy our life is by comparing how good are we doing compared to other people, and to be more specific, by making sure that we are not just doing well, but that we are actually doing better than others. Of course, that as human beings, we constantly look for points of reference, paradigms, and good examples to be followed. And that's nothing wrong with that. That's good, actually. But learning from others should be an exercise that should confront us with our very selves. And I don't think that I don't like the use of the word competition, but if we want to be competitive, again, we should compete with our very selves. And the evaluation of our achievements and goals should be the result of that contrast between what we did and what we do now, where we were and where we are now. How much have we improved from what we were and what we have become? Taking as a point of reference not how better we are doing compared to others, but how better we are doing compared to ourselves. Matthew 20:1-16 teaches us, among other things, that God will take care of us. God will give us not only what was agreed, but what is just and necessary. It also teaches us that we don't know the battles that others are freeing, the many sacrifices that others have done in order to be where they are today, where they are now. That instead of criticizing, the real and genuine growth comes when we help others to be the better version of themselves. When we seek to grow together, not by hating the growth of others, but by celebrating it honestly. By knowing that among the many possible reasons for their late arrival is that we have been so busy working and worried about our own and personal growth that we didn't bring them to the landowner so that they could also benefit from having a job and getting paid. It was the landowner itself, the one who went out there, found them, brought them, paid them from his very own money, and we still complain. If you are one of the hired early in the morning, pray for those that are still out there, especially in these times of pandemic, in which literally many have lost their jobs. It doesn't matter if they arrive late, sometimes even if they never arrive. Reach out to them and tell them that God will never abandon them, that God will always provide. It doesn't matter much the order in which we arrive. What really matters is the desire to serve, to be transformed, and to be agents of transformation, because it is by contributing to the growth of others that we are actually fructified. May God continue to bless you and keep you until we meet again. Amen.